Hey guys, welcome to the channel again. So slowly I'm starting to transition my machine here from Windows to Linux. I still have now both systems installed because I want it to be a smooth transition, but I'm using now mainly Linux every single day, and I will switch over completely probably in the coming weeks, and about this I have a special video coming up. Anyway, in this tutorial we are going to install Arch Linux with a root partition and a separate home partition. The advantage in this is that if something happened to the system and if you need to reinstall it, you can just reinstall the system in the root partition and you don't lose any of your personal data. So in this tutorial here we are going to install actually Arch Linux on a root and home partition on the same drive, but in the upcoming tutorial I'm going to show you also how to install Arch Linux with a separate partition, having the home partition on a separate hard drive. So let's get started.
So here we go guys, we are now in KDE Plasma and this is the desktop. So as I said in the intro, I'm transitioning on my main machine now from Windows to Linux, and I'm still in that testing phase, but so far everything is working well. And so let's go ahead with this tutorial. So today we are going to install Arch Linux, creating a root and a home partition. Again, the purpose of separating these two directories is to make so that if something happens to the system, you could reinstall it in the root partition and you don't lose any data in the home partition. So because now I am on a Linux system, I'm going to do this again on VirtualBox, and I'm already logged in the terminal here. So let me pull up my terminal. Now I can do everything with the terminal, and I'll go full screen and increase the font size so that you can see better. There you go. So the first thing we are going to do, as usual, is to check for an internet connection. So if I'll type in IP space A, I have an IP here ending with 15. This is an internal network. If you're connected with an Ethernet cable there, you'll see your IP. And if you have Wi-Fi right now, you will type in Wi-Fi-menu. And when you hit enter, you can select your network, enter the password, and you'll have an IP as well. And once we have an IP, the first thing we do is to synchronize the time with the internet. So we'll type in time, date, CTL, space set dash NTP, true, and hit enter. And there you go. Now we can move to the next point. So I'll clean up the terminal first, and let me type in lsblk. And as you can see there, I have only one disk in this machine, SDA, of around 120 gigabytes. So this is a EUFI system, and I'm going to create in this system a EUFI partition, a root partition, a home partition, and a swap file. So let's begin now with the partitioning. And since the disk is SDA, I'm going to type in fdisk /dev/SDA. Fdisk, as you know already, probably is our partitioning tool, and hit enter. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a GPT label for the disk. So I'll type in G and hit enter. And now we are ready to create the first partition. So the first partition is going to be the EUFI partition. So I'll type in N for new and hit enter. The default is number 1, so I'll accept this by hitting enter. I'll accept also the default for the first sector, so I'll just hit enter here. And we have to define the last sector. So I want this partition to be around 500 megabytes, so I'll type in plus 500, capital M, and hit enter. We don't worry about the file system now, we'll partition this later. Now let's move on to the second partition. So let's type in N for new and hit enter. Default is partition number 2, so that's fine. So I'll hit enter here. And I'll accept the default for the first sector as well. So I'll just hit enter. And for the last sector, now we have to decide how big we want to have our root partition, because this is going to be our root partition. So the size of the root partition really depends how many programs you want to install on the system. I'd say on average between 20 and 30 gigabytes should be fine for normal use, but you can adjust it accordingly. In my case, I'm going to do it 30 gigabytes, so I'll type in plus 30 and a capital G and hit enter. And now we have the root partition created. Let's move on now to the home partition. So we'll type in N for new. Default number 3, it's fine, so I'll hit enter. I'll accept also the first sector, so I'll just hit enter here. And I'll accept also the default for the last sector because I want the home partition to take the remainder of the disk. So I'll just hit enter here. And now we have our home partition as well. So the last step here is to write the changes to the disk. So we'll type in W and hit enter. And I'll clean up the terminal and type in again lsblk. And as you can see, now we have our 3 partitions there, SDA1, SDA2, and SDA3. So again, SDA1 is the EUFI partition, SDA2 is our root partition, and SDA3 is our home partition. So let's begin now formatting. So we'll begin with SDA1, which is going to be a FAT file system. So we'll type in mkfs for make file system .fat. We specify the file system type. And then we need to say which FAT file system. So we'll type in dash capital F, and it's a 32 FAT file system. And then the name of the partition. So in my case, /dev/SDA1, and hit enter. And there you go. Now, the root partition, we'll need to create this by formatting the partition as an ext4 file type. So we'll type in mkfs again, .ext4, again the file type, and then the partition name. So in my case, /dev/SDA2, and hit enter. So let's move to the home partition, and we'll type in this case, mkfs.ext4, again, then the partition name, so /dev/SDA3, and hit enter. And there you go. So I'll clean up the terminal, and I'll type again lsblk. And now we can move to the mounting. So we need to mount first our root partition, which is going to be the mount directory in the system we want to install. So we'll type in mount, then the partition name, so /dev/SDA2 space, and then the directory where we want to mount this partition. So in my case, /mount, because this is where the system is going to be installed. And then hit enter. Now we need to create the EUFI directory to mount the first partition there. We could just mount this on the boot directory, but for visual reference, I like it to have it on an EUFI directory. So the EUFI directory is not existing yet, and the boot directory neither. So we need to create those directories first. So this time, instead of using two commands to create two directories, I'll just use one command to do that. And the command is going to be mkdir and then -p. The -p option on the mkdir directory creates multiple directories, basically a parent directory. So we are creating now /mount, which exists already, /boot, which does not exist, and /EUFI, which does not exist as well. So we are telling the system to create now the EUFI partition and the boot partition, and then we'll just hit enter. Now we can mount SDA1 on this EUFI directory. So to do this, we'll type in mount /dev/SDA1 space, and then /mount /boot /EUFI, and hit enter. Now we need to also mount the SDA3 partition on the home directory, which does not exist yet. So we'll have to type in mkdir /mount /home, and hit enter. And now we can mount SDA3 on the home directory. So we'll type in mount /dev/SDA3 /mount /home, and hit enter. Now I'll clean up the terminal and type in again lsblk. We'll see our mount points there. So we have SDA1 on the EUFI partition, SDA2 is on the mount directory, which is the installation directory, and SDA3 is on the home directory. So everything looks good. Now we can install the base system, and we'll type in pacstrap. And then we need to say where we want to install the system. So this is going to be under the /mount directory. And then the packages we want to install. So in my case, I'm going to install base. I want to install Linux and Linux-firmware. And I'll install also an editor because I'm going to need it anywhere later. And in my case, it's going to be Nano. And then I'll just hit enter. So it's going to take a moment now to download and install everything, and I'll be back in a second. So there you go. The packages are installed, and I'll clean up the terminal. Now that we installed the base system, we can generate the fstab file, which contains all the mount points of the system. And to do this, we'll type in gen fstab. So for generating fstab, -U, and then /mount, and then twice the measure sign, and then the fstab location. So it's /mount /etc /fstab, and hit enter. Now let's see the content of fstab just to make sure that everything is there. So we'll type in cat /mount /etc /fstab, and hit enter. As you can see there, we have our three partitions. We have the root partition, the first one on the list. We have our EUFI partition and our home partition there. So everything looks good, and I'll clean up the terminal. Now the next step is to leave the installer and move into the installation. So to do this, we'll type in arch -root, and then /mount, because this is where the install is, and hit enter. And as you can see, the login prompt changed. That means we left the installer and now we are in the installation. And the first thing I want to do is actually to create the swap file. So let's do this by typing in fallocate space -l. Then we need to specify the size of the swap file. In my case, I want it to be 2 GB, so I'll type in 2 GB and then /swapfile and hit enter. Now we need to change the permissions of the swap file so that it can be written on. And to do this, we'll type in chmod for changing permissions. And the permissions for this are number 600 and then /swapfile and hit enter. Now we can make the swap by typing in mkswap /swapfile and hit enter. And now we can activate the swap by typing in swap on /swapfile and hit enter. Now we need to put the swap file in the fstab file. So to do this, let's type in nano. This is the editor we installed before, and then etc /fstab and hit enter. We'll scroll down to the last empty space here and we'll type in /swapfile space none space swap space 0 space 0. And then Ctrl O and enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. All right, so now we can move on to the time zone. So to do this, we'll type in ln-sf/user/share/zone info /Europe in my case and /Zurich in my case. You replace this according to your position and your city. And we are going to link this to /etc/local time and hit enter. Okay, now we can synchronize the hardware clock to the system clock. So we'll type in HW clock space --sys2hc. So basically system to hardware clock and hit enter. Okay, now we can move on to the locales. So let me first clean up the terminal. And to do this, we'll type in nano /etc/locale.gen. So we need to edit this locale.gen file and hit enter. Now we scroll down until we find the locale we are looking for. Well, in my case, I'm looking for English US. So I'll go down here until I see it. And we have two of those. And I'll select the first one, which has UTF-8 and uncomment this line by deleting the hashtag. And then again, Ctrl O and enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. Now we can generate the locales by typing in locale-gen and hit enter. And now we need to edit also the locale.conf file. So to do this, we'll type in nano /etc/locale.conf and hit enter. And we'll type in this string lang, all in capital letter, equal, and then en, in my case, you choose the string you chose before, _ us.utf-8. And then Ctrl O and enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. All right, now we can move to the next point, which is configuring the host name. So we'll type in nano, we need to edit a file, /etc/hostname and hit enter. You can choose the name for your machine here. In my case, I'm just going to call it arch VB. And then again, Ctrl O and enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. And then we can move up to the hosts file. So we'll type in again nano /etc/hosts and hit enter. And we'll fill up these infos here, 127.0.0.1 tab localhost. Then down on the next line with the enter key, ::1 tab localhost again. And then enter again the last line, 127.0.1.1. Then in this case, the host name. So I choose actually before arch VB and then .local domain and then a tab again and then again the host name. So in my case, arch VB. You change this according to what you chose before. And then again, Ctrl O and enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. So now we can create the password for our root user. And to do this, we'll type in passwd and hit enter and enter the new password. And hit enter and retype it. and hit enter again. So now we have everything done. We need to install now the bootloader and some other networking packages. So to do this, we'll type in pacman-s. And the first package is GRUB, our bootloader. And then because this is a EUFI system, we need to install also EFI boot mgr, EFI boot manager. Then we need to install also network manager. We'll install also network-manager-applet. We'll install also wireless_tools and also WPA_supplicant. We'll also install dialog. I'm not sure this is already installed by other packages, but just to make sure, I'll put it in here. I'll install also OS prober and also mtools, DOS FS tools as well. And then two development packages. One is base-devil and linux-headers. So make sure the packages are wrote down correctly, and when you're ready, you just hit enter. Hit enter to accept the defaults, and hit enter to proceed with the installation. So it's going to take a moment again to install everything. I'll be back in a sec. So there you go, the packages are installed, and I'll clean up the terminal. Now we need to install GRUB, but first let me pull up again lsblk, because if you remember, GRUB is our bootloader and needs to be installed in the EFI directory. So you can see here where the mount point for the EFI directory is, and we're going to need this to install GRUB. So let's do this by typing in grub-install. Then we specify the target machine, so --target equal, well, this machine is a EUFI system, so it's going to be a x86_64-EFI, then a space, and then --, and then we have to specify the EFI directory. So we'll type in EFI-directory equal, and we're putting the mount point we see above on STA1. So in my case is /boot/EFI. Then a space again, and we need to define the bootloader ID. So we'll type in bootloader-ID, and we know it's GRUB, so we'll type in GRUB, all capital letters, and hit enter. No error reported. So now we need to generate the GRUB configuration file. So to do this, we'll type in grub-mkconfig, then space -o, and then /boot/grub/grub.cfg. Basically, we are telling the system here to output the content of the configuration file in the CFG file under the GRUB directory and under the boot directory. And then we just hit enter. And there you go. So the base install now is done. So we need to exit the installation and return to the installer. So we'll just type in exit and hit enter. And now we can unmount all the partitions. So we'll type in umount-a and hit enter. We'll see some errors here. That's fine. We don't need to worry about that. Now we can reboot the machine, and we will be greeted by the GRUB bootloader, where we can select to boot Arch Linux. So go ahead, reboot your machine, select Arch Linux, log in with your root user, and I'll meet you back here in the terminal. So there you go, guys. The installation was successful. Now I'm logged in as root again in my terminal, and we can proceed with the installation. So the first step is to start the internet. So we'll type in systemctl start network manager with capital N and capital M, and hit enter. And then we can enable network manager so that the next time it's going to be started automatically. So let's pull up the same command with the up arrow, and we'll replace start with enable, and we'll just hit enter. And now if we type in IP space A, I have an IP on my Ethernet cable. If you don't have an Ethernet cable right now and you have Wi-Fi, you'll type in now NMTUI, and when you hit enter, you can go to activate a connection and hit enter there. You'll see a list of your networks here. Select yours, enter the password, and you will be connected to the internet as well. So I'll log out of the program and I'll clean up the terminal. So now that we have internet, we can move to the next step, which is creating a new user. So we'll type in user add -m. The M means we'll give the user a home directory, and then -g for the group. And then we type in the group name. So in my case, wheel, because this has to do with the sudo. We'll check this later. And then the username you want to have. So in my case, my name, and hit enter. Now we give Hermano also a password. So we'll type in passwd and then the username and hit enter and give a new password and retype it. Now we need to give this user sudo power. So to do this, we'll type in editor, all in capital letters, equal nano. And then the command is sudo and hit enter. And we'll scroll down here until we find the will group we spoke about before. And there are two of those here. And the one we need to uncomment is the first one, which says all equal all. So we delete the hashtag here and then hit Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. So we have a new user, so I'll clean up the terminal and we move to the next point, which is installing our graphics driver. So we have three choices. Basically, we can install graphics driver for Intel cards, for AMD cards, and for NVIDIA cards. So for Intel cards, you will type in now pacman-s xf86-video-intel, and you will hit enter. If you have an AMD card, you replace Intel with AMD GPU. And if you have an NVIDIA card, you'll type in NVIDIA and NVIDIA-utils. Then you hit enter, go ahead with the installation, and you'll have your drivers. I am now in VirtualBox, so right now I don't need to install this. And once we install the graphic drivers, we move on to the display server. So in my case, I want to install Xorg. And to do this, we'll type in pacman-S and then Xorg and hit enter. Accept the defaults by hitting enter and proceed the installation with hitting enter. So it's going to take a moment here to install everything. There you go, that was pretty quick. So I'll clean up the terminal. Now we need to decide which desktop environment we want to install. So we have a lot of choices here. We could install GNOME, we could install KDE, we could install XFCE, or many others. Well, I'll keep it simple. In this tutorial, I'm just going to install GNOME, but I'll show you also the packages to install KDE. So if you want to install GNOME, the display manager for installing GNOME is GDM. So we'll type in pacman-s and then GDM, very simply. If you want to install KDE afterwards, you would install another display manager, which is SDDM. So choose the one you want to install, and then when you're ready, you just hit enter. In my case, it's GDM. And I'll accept the installation by hitting enter. And there you go. So I'll clean up the terminal. Now we need to enable the display manager so that it starts up automatically next time we boot the machine. So for this, we'll type in systemctl enable, and then the display manager you chose. So whether it's GDM or SDDM, and then hit enter. There you go. So the last step is to install the desktop environment. So I will install GNOME because I have GDM. If you want to install KDE, you will install by typing in pacman-s. First package you need for KDE is Plasma. Then you could install also KDE-applications, which installs some extra things for KDE. Then if you want to have user directories like videos, pictures, and so on, you can install also xdg-user-dirs. And the last package which I would install is also the package kit-qt5, because if you plan to update your packages through the Discover Software Center, you need this, otherwise it will not work. And when you're ready, you just hit enter and proceed with installation. But I want to install GNOME, so I'll remove these packages here and I'll install GNOME. And I could install also GNOME-extra, which includes some extra packages. You can do this if you want to, but in my case, I'll stick with GNOME and then I'll just hit enter. Accept the defaults by hitting enter. And I'll proceed with installation by hitting enter. So it's going to take a moment to download and install everything, and I'll be back when it's done. So the packages are now installed, and we can now reboot the system, and we'll be again greeted by the GRUB bootloader. And let's select then Arch Linux, and we should be greeted then by the GDM display manager where we can log into GNOME. So let's go ahead and reboot, and let's meet back at the GNOME desktop. So there you go, guys. We are now at the login prompt in Arch Linux, and I'll just type in my password here to log in. And everything worked fine. So let me pull up the terminal because I just want to check for updates shortly. And I go full screen here and increase the font size again. There you go. And so let's type in sudo pacman-s yyuu and hit enter. Enter our password and hit enter again. And the system is up to date, so that's perfect. Close the terminal. Now let's go shortly to the file manager. And let's have a look at the home partition. So this is the home partition. I'll right click here and click properties. And as you can see, this is the home partition we created STA3, if you remember, when we did the installation. So basically, this is where we have our documents, our photos, music, whatever we need to work on. So when something goes wrong with the system, we can basically reinstall from the ISO, reinstall the system under the mount directory, which was our installation directory. We can just create the home directory and mount STA3 in there, and we will have still all our data there. So it's a great way to have a failsafe if something happened to the installation. Of course, if you have a problem with the disk itself, it won't help much because then you'll have to probably reformat the whole disk. But for that, we could create also the home directory on a second drive. And I'm going to show you how to do this in the next tutorial.
And there you go, guys. This is how to install Arch Linux on a root partition and a separate home partition on the same drive. And in an upcoming video, I'm going to show you how to install actually the home partition on a separate hard drive. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it, and please give it a thumbs up and sub to the channel if you loved it. And if there is anything specific you want me to cover or you have any question, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.